Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. We're just letting everyone populate into the chat here and let everybody get situated. And then this is going to be recorded, just so everybody knows. We are at the WWA online Zoom celebration for Harvest of Horror. So I'm just going to wait a couple seconds here and let everybody get into the Zoom session, and then we'll get started. Thank you for joining, everyone. This is just great. The fact that we had thunderstorms today, I think just supports this whole idea of talking about a horror story, about horror stories, right? So, good afternoon and welcome to the online celebration of WWA Press's Harvest of Horror. I'm TK Sheffield and I write stories for readers to laugh and escape. I'm also the host of the Wispresso Cafe, which is produced by the Wisconsin Writers Association. It's a Saturday morning chat show where we talk about books, writers, and indie bookstores. The next one is March 21st at 10 a.m. Central, so feel free to join. I've got some links here in the chat if you need to find out more about what I'm talking about. For those of you new to WWA, WWA provides resources and community building opportunities to help writers achieve their literary goals. We have critique groups, the Midwest Writers Room podcast, and we have Ken and Luella here, our president of the group, who are hosts of that very popular podcast. That we have a YouTube channel, contests, a press, and a fall conference in Manitowoc on October 23rd and 24th. So keep an eye on the website for details like submitting to speak, be on a panel, or sell your books at the vendor fair. And the WWA Press just announced a call for Harvest of Romance, the Harvest of Romance anthology. So see the website for those details. And finally, before I get to our guest of honor, the critique groups are open. In addition to poetry, fiction, and nonfiction, we have a memoir writing class. So check out the website. Those classes fill quickly, so if you want to join them, please do so fast. And the press will have more books coming out soon, but I would love to chat with David Rank. And today we have a dungeon of authors, what you call a mass noun for a group of horror writers, right? Is it a murder or a dungeon of horror
Mm,
writers? So,
That's a good
David,
that's a very good question. I kind
so
of like I kind of like the dungeon
the
effect.
dungeon of horror writers. So
It's a
take it
bit
away, David. The
yes.
floor is yours.
Hello. Hi, I'm Dave Rank, a member of the WWA, past president, infamously, and and I'm also a member of the Horror Writers Association, and we have a chapter here in Wisconsin. And my we started. It occurred to me that many of our Horror Writers Association members are also members of the WWA, or several of them, anyways. And I thought when with the WWA Press that why not ask them if they'd like to do a collection of horror stories. And I talked to Luella about that, and she at a WWA conference, and she kind of liked the idea and bounced around a while, and then we decided, or I should say, they decided to put together the a Wisconsin Harvest of Horror collection, which it now appears as might be the debut volume for a series of collections of genre short stories. The next one, as Luella mentioned, is for romance, and who knows where it'll go from there. Uh, my background is I'm retired. I've worked in community newspapers and magazines and corporate communications for a long time, but I've always been a writer and reader of fiction, and I don't remember a time when I didn't think I'd be a writer. Um, Way back in grade school, and I always wrote. Oh, everything I wrote always turned to the dark side. And the first short story I ever wrote was in a grade school assignment, and it involved a Native American, a witch, and how corn got multicolored. So you'll never find that anywhere, but it's that was my first story, and it's gotten I continued in that vein ever since. And uh, we have before I continue, I want to introduce several of the people who are here from the writers, the contributors to the um, anthology, and I'll shut up eventually and let them speak. But for now, I've got the camera, so that's that. Brent Michael Kelly is here, uh, and Jenna Dixon. I hope you don't mind my using your real name. She uses a pen name in the book, uh, and let's see. Um, And that. I guess it's just the three of us. If am I missing somebody? No. Um, so welcome. And as I said, I'll let you talk. Don't worry. But for now, it's going to be me. And
David,
we.
if you slide your participants around, you'll find more people.
Uh, oh, okay.
There's a lot of them there.
I see 12 participants. Am I missing some?
No, I thought you were going to introduce them.
Um, I am. There's Brent Kelly and Jenna Dixon and me. And oh, and Jim, I'm sorry, Jim Rice is also here. I apologize. Uh, so we'll all read a little bit from our stories and talk about the writing and answer any questions you may have. You know, what twisted paths did we take to end up on and writing horror? Um, and I'm going to go on and to tell you a little bit about my story. It's called the Uleo Hound, and Uleo, Ulao, is an actual place. It's in Ozaki County on the shore, on the bluff over Lake Michigan. And a little tiny bit about the history of Uleo kind of inspired me to get going on this story. And like most of my stories, it kind of circulated in my head for a long time. Uh, and before I actually wrote it, and I wrote it specifically for this anthology. Um, And I think I won't waste more of your time trying to explain things further. I'll just read for a few minutes and then I'll introduce you again to the other writers who are here. It's called the Uleo. Oh, Steve Fox joined us. That's another one of the contributors. I will include him also. The Uleo Hound. There is an ulterior motive beneath the veneer of every interaction, Logan Brock believed. A lesson learned early in life. This morning's walk in the unkempt woods behind the mansion was no exception. The trick is to figure out what that unspoken motive was before it bit you in the ass. He glanced at the stately old woman walking arm in arm beside him. What does she want? There had to be more to this surprise invitation than a mind-numbing stall to keep him apart from Louisa. Besides, it will ruin my new boots, he thought. Chosen more for style than utility, they already pinched, and he worried the soggy path they trod would soak and stain the leather. This was not the greeting he expected, arriving at the Kruger estate less than an hour prior. What does this old bat expect? Logan thought, glancing up at his companions. at his companion, excuse me. Her shimmery white hair piled high on her head added to the uncomfortable impression she towered over him. Really, it was only by 2 inches at best, he reminded himself. They slow walked the uneven path, the damp air piercing his shirt. This stroll was not in his plan that gray spring morning. At the front door, he was surprised to be met by the Kruger family matriarch. He intended to avoid her, timing his arrival with Grand Matilda's already out on her daily constitutional alone. Instead, she opened the carved wide door before Logan even rang the bell, a smile on her narrow face, her beady eyes gleaming. Walk with me, she said, before he could even sputter a good morning. I want to show you the woods. It's all old growth, never been harvested. Fascinating. There was no escape. Grand Mattie was the overlord of the estate, controlled all aspects of the clan, including the life of his Louisa. Logan had worked too hard to get this close to a wealthy family, even one in the boondocks north of Milwaukee. He wouldn't risk offending this unpleasant woman who held all the keys to the treasure boxes. Logan could not refuse this invitation, even though a handful of pitiful excuses ran through his mind. With a wan smile, he said, "Of course. Delighted to. Delighted to join you. I'll speak with Louisa for a moment, and then we can be off. My granddaughter is dressing still. It will be some time. We'll be back before she is ready for you." Grand Mattie held out an arm. "There is time for a healthy stroll. Shall we?" When the cab dropped him off at the front entrance, Logan wanted to see his lovely Louisa at the door and looked forward to a robust breakfast with her at his side before setting off for a leisurely day of shopping and entertainment in the city. Now that he had charmed his way into the Kruger family, he had grown used to such good things. Instead, he was walking in wet boots in the tedious woods with Louisa's ancient grandmother. Oh, how he despised Grand Mattie, her airs of superiority, her pompous attitude, her obvious dislike for him. Watch your step, Brock, he thought. This must be part of a scheme to get rid of me. Her deep voice, so unladylike, grated against Logan's every nerve fiber, even as she pointed out some unique tree or bush he gave not a whit about, or identified every bird squawk and twitter they heard. I think I'll leave it there. It goes on from there. Now, I'd like to introduce Steve Fox. Hello, Steve.
Well,
And uh, basically, if you their format is, could you talk a little bit about yourself, your background, and then read a little bit from your story.
yeah, I'm Steve. I live in Hudson right now, and a background. Guess I've always been writing, but I didn't start taking it seriously till later in life. First collection of stories is Sometimes Creek, published by Cornerstone Press, and that's where the story that appears in this anthology comes from. Um, I didn't really consider myself a horror writer till Dave got a hold of me and said, "You're a horror writer," and I said, "Is that right?" And he said, "Yeah, it's not all." So I got my work computer over here next to me. By day, I work on software, keep the internet safe for everybody else. It's my lunch break now. He said, "Yeah, it's not all chainsaws and blood spatter, it's darkness and tension and things like that." I'm like, "Oh, then I guess I am a horror writer." So yeah, it's literary gothic speculative fiction. The second collection is called These Are My People. That came out just 2 months ago. It's not quite as on the Gothic side or speculative, well, Gothic, like Midwestern Gothic, Northern Gothic, whatever you want to call it, but not as quite as um, speculative Kafka-like. This story I'll read a snippet of is called Yard Mary, and this is what appears in the anthology. And I'll read like 2.5 pages. It's is 3 minutes, 4 minutes, okay, Dave?
Sounds about right. But before you do, I think you should or I'll mention that Steve has won several awards for his writing over the years, and I don't know if he wants to mention a few of them there. You could otherwise you can read them in the book itself. We have a bio page. Steve, anything you want to mention or?
I when I started taking writing more seriously, I thought I'll write a novel. But I knew that to publish traditionally, probably needed an agent. And in order to get an agent, you need to have a publication history. And to get publication history, you had to write probably short stories. And it turns out writing a novel takes a while, and query letters are pretty awful and never, sometimes don't even get read. So I thought I'd write short stories to try to win certain contests that offer agency review as part of the award. So I kind of dialed into those like Master's Review, and um, there's another good one. I'll think of the name of it probably after we log out. Um, Contests like that. And in the process, I started winning some awards like the Jade Ring and the Wisconsin Academy uh, People and Ideas Award and a couple others. And I still don't have an agent. I still don't have a novel, but I'm working on it. So does that help?
Thank you.
So the story is Yard Mary, and I'll just read like the first like 2.5 pages. It takes like 3.5, 4 minutes. Yard Mary. Sometimes our moms took us along when they went to work for our dads on the other side of town, scrubbing toilets and folding underwear. That's how we learned about the Yard Marys and the sacred naming ritual. Yard Marys sprouted from the lawns over there, one per yard. Most were made of porcelain or some kind of glass. Some grew from cement, and others were said to grow from plastic. I never saw one of those, but it didn't really matter. Our other sisters' families were really proud, and they all submitted to their holy Yard Marys morning and night. The Yard Marys eventually named the children born into the homes they watched over. Sometimes it took years. This surprised us at first because we thought something like a naming would happen right away, like it did with us on this side of town at birth. These other sisters married gave them beautiful names like Delilah and Penelope and Basima and Jamila. On this side of town, our moms gave us names like Gert and Donda and Babali and Dot. I'm Dot. Mom says it's short for Dorothy, but everyone calls me Dot. My other sisters lay on their backs at the feet of their yardberry as the sun rose and the sun set to wait for her to drop tears. My dad said that when the tears flowed, they always flowed black. Black as ravens, he said, black as ravens disappearing into the night mouths of their babes. I asked my dad if he ever saw a yardberry cry. He said no, but he shook his head in awe just the same. Our other sisters told us how the Yard Mary's tears lit on the tongues of the faithful, landing with a whisper that spoke to them their given Yard Mary name. They'd stick out their tongues, showing off their special black spots where the black kisses their Yard Mary's tears landed. They strutted around all snotty and superior, fresh alabaster skin aglow whenever we visited with our moms. Until then, the other sisters' skin seemed pale, their eyes deep and sunken with dark streaks beneath. I think the name waiting kept them awake all night. Or maybe it was a fear of ending up and never named. It was hard to know. There were no Marys in the yards on our side of town. Instead, we had spindly trees and houses that flaked paint. The trees bore no fruit, but rather were thick with the plastic shopping bags that rattled in the top branches. The plastic bag ceiling had darkened our yards year round. Older bags gathered rainfall and dew that leaked a constant dingy drizzle during the warmer months. These bulging bags turned into solid blocks of ice in the winter and snapped branches when the wind blew hard. The frozen bags came down like anvils, and the paint chips gusted around the yards like coils like leaves in the fall. The trees were put here to snag plastic shopping bags before they could blow out into the ocean. None of us had ever seen the ocean. A man from the city came by before all the tree planting started and showed photos of water and an endless wad of plastic floating on top. He moved the tip of his finger slowly to show which was the ocean and which was the plastic. His fingertip rested on the image of the plastic bag barge. He said it was already twice the size of Texas. 3 times France, one of the men wearing a dark suit next to him said. He looked at each one of us to make sure we all heard. He seemed pretty excited, like someone does when they're telling a juicy secret. He pointed at a pamphlet in his hand. Our yards, our oceans. It was up to us, the OYOO pamphlet read, to provide the last line of defense for the oceans. The trees would keep the oceans clean and would work like a huge collection of dream catchers, except that these trees would catch plastic shopping bags instead of the things we could dream about. God save the oceans, he said, and handed me the pamphlet and walked away, shaking his head. I looked down the street. I turned the pamphlet over. There's an American flag on the back. I looked up again. Paint chips tumbled on the lawn between me and another man on the sidewalk. That man nailed an OYOO poster onto a telephone pole over a handmade lost cat sign. I heard him tell someone else that by letting the city dig up our lawns, we were doing our part. That what we were doing out here, hundreds of miles from everywhere, was heroic. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Steve. It's a very good story. One of my favorites. And it occurred to me that before we continue, this is the book. It's the cover of the book. If it's not, in case you're looking for it, it should be out like in Amazon and bookstores and online. I don't know, maybe Luella could tell us a little more about the distribution, but um, we'll be spreading the word about it. As a matter of fact, this evening I'll be uh, with me and Dean and Dean Wild, Margie Sponholz, Jim, and Chris Miklos will be at in Slinger, Wisconsin, at a place called the Sippy Hippie. Great name. We'll be promoting a Wisconsin Harvest of Horror and doing some readings and selling some books. That'll start at 7 o'clock if anyone is within a comfortable ride to Slinger. It's located just about 30 minutes north of Milwaukee. So that's there. That's my plug for the day. And now I'd like to go to um, uh, Jenna. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your story, and then read for a few minutes?
Sure. Sorry, I couldn't figure out how to unmute. I guess I'll start by saying I would typically say I'm a fantasy writer and had actually written this story. It was originally like quadruple the length, and when they announced the WWA contest to include, I cut down the story to fit into for the contest and won that way into the anthology. And it's just kind of funny looking at some of the other novels I'm working on right now. They all do have a horror element that I wasn't actually really aware I was doing. So I wouldn't say I was a horror writer before this, but maybe now after it, I would say maybe I am. Um, so I'll read you, I'll just start from the beginning, read the first 2 pages or so. Um, the Gray Mare. The day was sunny, but Scott felt like a dark smudge as he walked along the perfectly kept sidewalk through the village of Friendship, Wisconsin. After 52 years, he passed by the pubs and clothing boutiques and ice cream shops with casual disregard. Despite his polo and khakis he wore for the pickup shift at the local gas station, Scott still looked scraggly and somewhat unkempt. Tall and wiry, his shoulder-length brown red hair remained limp in the light breeze. The further he walked out of town, the smaller his cloud of dirt became until he could finally breathe the fresh air. The pristine sidewalk became gravel, then dirt, then overgrown weeds. His footsteps, once heavy as the cement, became as soft and springy as the broadleaf and creeping Charlie underfoot. If you weren't looking for the turnoff to his farm, you wouldn't see it. Enormous basswood trees with emerald heart-shaped leaves crowded the potholed gravel drive. The spread of the thorny invasive buckthorn grew everywhere between the gray trunks of the grand old trees, choking them where they stood. A hand-painted sign on a piece of wood he had carved himself declared "Farm Fresh Eggs." He had never seen that before and decided to use it. He often wondered then what other eggs were. The ranch home he had grown up in sat amid a stand of red pine at the end of the drive. The siding was in an advanced state of disrepair, and the pines had long since covered the mossy roof with swaths of dead brown needles. Perhaps it was their own version of tears shed for their fallen, plankton-nailed fellows below. The abrupt rise of the sandstone mound that was the centerpiece to the Rochacree State Park loomed behind their property, like a wall, a warning. The petroglyphs adorning the side of the prehistoric stone were ancient reminders of the culture and spirit of the land. Cavalry riders in the 1800s had vandalized the art from atop their horses in careless disdain. His dad's old show horse and the last of his dwindling inheritance, Midnight, had given up on the scraggly grass and was napping in the shade cast from the old stone barn. The horse's once shiny black coat was now coarse and gray and rough. The meager feed Scott was able to afford meant that the horse's hip bones jutted and his rib cage caught the shadows when the sun passed through the clouds. Sometimes Scott thought about selling him, but he was old and no one would want him. Despite the extra cost, he still harbored a fondness for the horse. It was a fondness grown of memories of a good time in his life, long since past, and a fondness he had since developed for the steady, reassuring presence the horse brought whenever Scott needed a break from the world. The temperature was dropping along with the sun. Stray fingers of mist crept onto Midnight's weedy pasture as Scott finished his evening feed routine and locked away the extra bag so the raccoons couldn't get at it. On a whim, he filled a bucket with a scoop of grain to walk over to the neighbor's donkey down the road. He didn't like his neighbor. On clear mornings, he could hear him yelling at the donkey to shut up when it brayed to be fed. I guess I'll stop there. That's where all the adventure starts after that.
Thank, thank you, Jenna. It's marvelous, I'll get in touch with you later and try to talk you into joining the HWA.
Yeah, definitely.
And next, I want to go with Jim, who goes by J.L. Royce. His story is in the book as well, in the collection. And Jim, tell us a little bit about yourself, your story, and do a little reading, a few minutes reading from it.
Thanks, Dave. And you can hear me okay? Audio is
Yes, I
good?
can.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Jim Royce, and my pseudonym is just a homophone of my German last name. So because I've lived through my life with people mispronouncing my name, I thought I could do something about that. I started writing in high school poetry and became at a very early age heavily involved with science fiction fandom and local groups in the St. Louis area that really fed my imagination for science fiction mostly, but also some horror. Uh, then I went off to school and it kind of fell by the wayside, but I kept writing just poetry. About 9 years ago, I decided that I'd have enough of this. I'm still working full time, but I started writing fiction, and it's often science fiction, but also just more generally macabre fiction. And I think if you look at this book, it's a good illustration of why, saying somebody's a horror writer is like saying that a chef is makes food. I mean, there are all sorts of horror, and you find examples of it in this volume, different approaches uh, to horror. My story, that when the catfish is calling, is a pretty straightforward, um, I'd say macabre tale. It's got a twist at the end, but the people and the situations are very familiar Wisconsin situations. And I'll just jump in the middle here. What we have is the main character, Kieran, is a fashion photographer, and he's taken a jaunt with his girlfriend and marketing manager to a location on the Mississippi River that some of you may actually recognize. Um, as a to explore it for a photo shoot, for a fashion shoot about outdoor clothing. So he's unexpectedly found that his girlfriend did have a past in this town, and now she's part of a beauty pageant having to do with a festival called Catfish Days. There's something else going on there, though, and he's about to find out when he gets pulled over by the local sheriff and taken to a coffee shop for a little heart to heart discussion. So we're jumping into the middle of the story here. Kieran sipped an iced skinny hazelnut latte with almond milk. How can you drink that stuff? Marvin snorted. Never mind. Let me get to the point. The sheriff gulped his black perked coffee. You know French Swamp was a town before the French arrived, right? The Indians, indigenous people. Ah, don't be a smartass. They were here thousands of years before the white man, living in the woods around the bluffs, using the caves, fishing, and farming. They took from the river, the ancient river, and must have come to terms with it as a way to survive. With what? His earlier idea came back to him. Why, Rue de Soleure, King Catfish. As Marvin droned on, a story formed in Kieran's mind. He was thankful for his tablet. Ageless rituals. Jesuits forced them underground. Years later, upstanding citizens fight the barbaric customs, and the resulting mob nearly destroys the town. But the ritual survives, even to this day, disguised. Catfish days, Kieran said aloud. Marvin nodded. But the ceremony only takes place at conjunction, full moon on the summer solstice, once every 27 years, like tonight. Kieran maintained a serious expression as long as he could, then burst out laughing. It really had me going. A big fish story. But I've got some things to do online. Story? Marvin's face reddened in anger. That last conjunction, an innocent girl died. Kieran recalled Jaden's childhood story. Some boating accident. What did the autopsy say? The lawman leaned over, speaking confidentially in a harsh whisper. I was new to the force, but I could see something was wrong with that investigation. Body was never found. The bay and river are only 20 feet deep there. They dredged, but nothing. Marvin straightened, bushy eyebrows rising, nodding slowly. And you think she was sacrificed as part of some ritual to appease the big fish? He shrugged. The river's deep, and old things live at the bottom, strong and hungry. Kieran considered how he could write such a tale. But Jaden, she isn't a virgin, you know. Marvin stared at Kieran in disbelief. It's a fish, boy. It wouldn't know those skanks down the road from the BVM. He crossed himself. It only knows young, tender flesh. Well, what do you propose to do? Get the town to cancel tonight's pageant? Don't be ridiculous. The people who believe in this fish thing run the town. They look like everybody else. Could we keep it from swimming near the shore? There's no we. I have a plan, Marvin shot back. Kieran considered. That walkway over the channel would be an excellent vantage point. Leave that to me, Marvin exclaimed. I don't need you drowning on my watch. But just in case, you might try talking your Jaden out of entering the pageant, or should I say, winning it. Once she heads up that hill, he shook his head. Marvin made to go, then paused. She can swim, can't she? And we'll leave it there. Um, Pick up the book if you want to hear more about this story or one of the other ones. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Um, and now I would like to introduce again Brent Michael Kelly, whose story is also in the collection. Brent, again, tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about the your story, and give us a little excerpt to get a taste of what you've written.
Sure. Well, I live in Tomahawk, Wisconsin right now, so I'm up in the woods. And originally grew up in a little town called Bruce, Wisconsin, where my story, The Blue Hills Beast, is set just outside of Bruce, which got its start as a lumber camp. So I haven't really written historical anything before, so it was kind of an interesting exercise to kind of go, you know, go looking into the logging history of Wisconsin, but just how I kind of got started. Like I mean, I was like wanted to be a writer growing up. Like I want to write books, and like I'm reading like everybody read Stephen King, but I'd be reading um like Piers Anthony really grabbed me with a couple of his things, and I was like, oh man, I wish I could do that, but like I thought you had to have like some kind of, I thought there was secret knowledge to be to get into that I didn't, I didn't have, and I didn't know where to find or how to even start looking for it. So just kind of assumed that there's a chosen few and I'm not in the club and it's out of my reach forever. But then like in the mid so like 2005-ish, 6, 7, somewhere around there, the the small press, like the Bizarro, especially small press things started popping up, and it was like that stuff was you know hitting my radar, and so I did a workshop with Jeremy C. Ship, and I met my pal Kate Jones, who was ended up being my critique buddy, and she started her own publishing company called Omnium Gatherum, and she's like, well, you should let me publish one of your books, and so she ended up publishing like all the books that I wrote so far, but they have since come back to I have the rights back now, so I have published them under my own imprint called Mystery Potion Books, but Kate and I are still besties to this very day, and well, anyways, so I got digging into the like logging camp history, and like those were like truly horrifying times. There's some things that I just didn't know, like like the child labor at logging camp. They would have like 8-year-olds out there because they would go to camp all week and they'd go home on the weekends. And so like in the late 1800s, you're gonna be on, like, you're in the back of a wagon getting pulled back to town by a team of horses, and you've been gone all week. You go home on the weekend. You get back like Friday night late or maybe Saturday morning early, and then you're going to go to spend Saturday with your family, church on Sunday, back in the wagon, back up to camp. And so, um, yeah, the little boys were called chickadees, and they used them for shoveling horse manure out of the path of because you gotta have the ground's got to be frozen so you can move the logs to the river, and there's a lot of injuries and fatalities happening in these times, and they're so far from help, and and it's winter. What are you gonna do? So um so yeah, what a great setting for a story. And then right up in the Blue Hills, where we have a ski hill called Christie Mountain, they have a mascot. It's a guy in a blue furry suit with big ski goggles, and he's the Blue Hills Beast, and he skis down the hill and come to Christie Mountain and have fun and stuff. And I was like, let me borrow him, and we're gonna rewrite his history. And so we went to so we're at logging camp. Um, our our blacksmith Victor is a Polish immigrant. He fled like the Russian occupation of Poland to come here and be a blacksmith at a lumber camp. The colonel hates him. The colonel runs the camp for AC Bruce Lumber Company, and he's like, I need help in the smithy. Can you give me a helper? And he's like, yeah, I'll give you this little boy named Charlie, who is just the worst chickadee. Charlie is he doesn't really belong at lumber camp, but he's Victor's helper now, and so he just kind of ends up delivering um, when Victor fixes some equipment, the boy takes it back to who it needs to go to. But so we're picking up with Victor in the smithy. Victor had no clock in the smithy. His main measure of time was how often he needed to stop and relieve himself. Each time he stepped behind the building, he found himself listening for heavy breathing or that low, dumb laugh. Oh, he heard a crazy sound out in the woods like the night or two before. They creeped him out. So, anyway, he heard nothing, nor did he see the silver flash of eyes catching moonlight. With only a handful of pieces left to repair, Victor's hands, arms, and back needed a rest. He stepped out for fresh air and a fresh pipe before the final push to finish the last of the night's work. Some distance away, a lit window at the cookhouse told him it was around 4 o'clock in the morning. The cook Turtle would have breakfast ready for the men by 5. This meant Victor still had a couple hours to finish the last pieces before the sun rose and the men began work. He knew Turtle would have some coffee brewed, and at the very least there would be some bread with lard and molasses to eat. He grabbed up an armload of axes and cant hooks to leave in front of the bunkhouse, and then he'd stop at the kitchen on his way back. In passing the cookhouse with his armload of tools, Victor heard a commotion coming from behind the building. A crash, a scream. Turtle! He dropped all but one axe and ran to help the cook. The back door of the cookhouse lay on the ground, ripped from the doorframe. Light pouring from the doorway showed a trail leading into the trees, and Victor heard Turtle cursing and yelping in pain. Axe in hand, Victor followed the trail into the moonlit forest. Turtle! I'm coming for you! Victor! Turtle screamed. Victor, help me! When Victor caught up, Turtle was on his belly, trying to crawl away. The creature on his back looked at Victor with eyes glinting silver. Its long arms, pale and gray, held Turtle's wrists. Victor! Turtle howled. Never breaking stride, Victor charged to save his friend, but there was so much distance to cover. The beast let out a cruel, idiot laugh, raised a clawed hand, and slashed at Turtle's neck and shoulder. No! Victor cried, and Turtle clutched his neck wound as the beast continued its attack. Finally, within axe reach, Victor swung at the creature. It leapt aside, laughing low. The thing had broad shoulders covered with thick black fur. Under the moonlight, it almost looked blue. Its arms and chest were gray and mottled. It clutched its bloody, long-fingered hands to its chest. Its wide head sat on a thick neck hunched down below its shoulders. Its lips drew black in a snarl to show a mouthful of broad, square teeth. The thing wore crude leggings fashioned from animal skins with thick wrappings around its feet. Victor swung the axe again, driving it back. I'll kill you, barked Victor. He raised his hand, and the axe darted forward. He raised the axe and darted forward, excuse me. The beast scrambled backward and ducked behind a tree. It leaned out and opened its mouth wide again as if to roar. What came instead was that deep, ugly laugh. Whether it was really laughing or that was just the creature's call, Victor had no guess. It disappeared then, leaving Victor and Turtle in the darkness. Victor took his coat off and wrapped Turtle in it. He cradled his friend, held his coat sleeve over Turtle's neck wound. Turtle? He asked. Turtle gave no answer. Help me! Victor howled over and over. By the time the men arrived, Victor had little voice to tell them what happened. He could barely stand, and Turtle's blood was freezing on his hands. Clouds had covered the moon, and the first flakes of the day's upcoming snowstorm danced on the rising wind.
Thank
Needless
you.
to say, a lot of people at camp think Victor is behind this attack.
Thank, thank you, Brent, and I think everyone that you've got a good sampling, a good taste of the variety of fiction that's available in a Wisconsin Harvest of Horror, and we have a few minutes left, and I'm gonna sort of open it up to all of us contributing writers. If are there any questions from anyone? If not, I'll keep talking, so that's a threat. If not, uh, we'll just I'll just ask my fellow writers, uh, why are you writing horror? You sort of touched on it earlier. Is there, for me, it's I think I always always had sort of a dark twist to things, and it's just the way I think they're fun stories to write. You put these twist endings on them, and your characters get to do bizarre things, and it's uh, and it's I don't know. For me, it's always been that way. I rarely have a happy ending, although it happens once in a while, by mistake, I think. Jenna, do you have any further comments on that?
Yeah, I was going to say, I kind of, because I don't always write horror, but I leaned towards that, for this story. I work with animal and horse rescue and kind of have, it's a tough job to have and things to do, and I had a lot of like lingering emotion tied to this. And like one of my favorite authors, Robin Hobb, she always said like to just lean into the emotions, and like it's not worth writing if your characters always have this happy, perfect life. Like what's the point of writing the story? So I kind of combined that like with that and just leaned into like all the emotions and everything involved, and like wasn't so focused on making it a happy story, but more focused on like getting the emotions and the point and making the reader think. And I think that's why I really enjoyed like the horror stories. It's like a different perspective on like events in the world where it's not always like a good ending. And yeah.
Jim, I know you mainly write science fiction, but uh, there's a general term called dark fiction, or noir fiction, actually, is sometimes called, where whatever the genre you're writing in, it's it tends to have a darker sensation to it, a feeling of dread throughout. Um, what draws you to that
Well, I
area?
think you're right. When I say I write science fiction, and there are various subgenres, but mostly I'm writing dark science fiction. So the focus isn't so much on the technology and the hard science, although I build those elements in as well as possible, but mostly, and the same with monsters, I'm more interested in the human consequences than the technology or the monster. How do these threats and these situations affect humans? How do they react? How do they cope? And I've had a few happy endings. I mean, it's not unheard of. But I think from my childhood, watching things like Outer Limits and Night Gallery and Twilight Zone and Alfred Hitchcock Presents, I found myself in that wanting to put myself in that category of Roald Dahl's adult fiction, um, Alfred Hitchcock, um, these writers of kind of uh, macabre stories or stories with a twist, and just drawn to it. I'm not sure. Maybe it's looking for answers for the dark side that we see every day in a safer setting, fiction. So.
Steve, you didn't really consider yourself a horror writer, but your your stories do tend to be kind of towards the dark side. You know, not a not a whole lot of happy endings in your fiction.
Yeah, I was just at a appeared for a book group, and they'd never read literary fiction before, and so I had some explaining to do, about my stories and why they end the way they do. And I said, look, commercial fiction is boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy girl meet up again and live happily ever after. Literary fiction, the stories are more open-ended and ambiguous and bordering on vague. And girl meets boy, girl loses boy, girl never sees boy again. And that's probably the best definition I could come up with. But in terms of darkness and horror, I mean, for me, it's a me, kind of leaning into the absurd a little bit. As you bend that, the story can become dark and reflect reality, and it's one way to address what I call broken human systems. So, especially when you put it in the brain or through a child narrator or a younger narrator, like my story Yard Mary is, it's not clear how old this, she's probably junior high school age. Trying to make sense of this world that the adults are building and the explanation for their solutions. Like, how absurd is it to keep the bags out of the ocean by planting trees to catch them before they can blow into the sea, right? So it's things like that that kind of give you a way to convey a different sort of story. Things maybe you shouldn't talk about at holiday meals. You can put into a dark story and make it tense.
Brent, you have why are you looking into the shadows?
So, I mean, it kind of always it went back to like the origin is sort of just want to yell, jump out of my. I love pranking my brother, right? Favorite thing. I had this is my business card. There's no information on it. That's what I give out. And I had 1,000 of them printed so I could hide them throughout my brother's home and his car, camper, garage. Everybody thinks it's pretty funny except Brian. Uh, he thinks it's not funny. So, he can be a real smart guy and everything, but look at it in this case we see he's dead wrong. But so I'd like to like I was kind of a prankster, right? Ooga booga, jumping out, yell Blair Witch from behind the door and get somebody. Well, uh, when I was about 15, I started experiencing sleep paralysis and the hypnagogic hallucinations that go with that. So it was like when you're getting taunted by a hissing ventriloquist dummy in your bedroom door saying you can't leave, we won't let you, you know. And you know, like in Bruce, Wisconsin, the population is about 800. Like, who do you talk to about that? Hey, listen, I was hallucinating in bed this morning. You're like, oh yeah, I think you are schizophrenic and you should. Oh, so mostly like that kind of stuff. Just I had to put it to work. So I could either just be terrified of going to sleep every night, or I could get up and start writing these things down. And now I'm going to inflict them on other people. So like, how about this, Brian? Read that. Hey, gonna give you some nightmares now. That's how I get you. But so that I mean that's kind of where it begins. But then the more as you get older and you see like people experiencing trauma or have some yourself, you start to kind of key into what horror shows us, especially like the horror that I grew up with. Uh, watching Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, it shows us that the monster is there's a very real monster, and in the case of like Halloween, very personal to the protagonist. So a very personal monster, but defeatable. Like it's doing all this, Jason's killing all the counselors and everything, but at the end, there's a way to defeat Jason. There's a way to defeat Freddy, and so I think that is kind of the one of the things that people who don't know much about the genre just like they don't know that we're reaching down into the dark. We're lowering a candle down for somebody who's down there. They can kind of light their way back to a better place. So that's why I do it. I could go on and on, but I won't.
Well, thank you. And I don't know how much time. It's close to an hour. I think that's basically what we had set apart for this session. Tell me if I'm wrong, and I'll just keep blathering on. So Brent as a guest. Um, so please take a look at the book, buy a few dozen copies. We'd all appreciate it. It's by the WWA Press. I'm very proud of it. It's a great collection of fiction, uh, great stories, and it's called Wisconsin Harvest of Horror, which kind of continues a theme. Um, there were two other books called Wisconsin Harvest. Uh, one was in the 60s, and another one came out in the, forgive me, I think the uh, 2010s or something like that, or 2000 something. Anyways, uh, again, thank you for coming all, and it was a delight in talking about the book and introducing my fellow writers, and good reading to all of you. And I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you.